Okay, so we're going to start populating this with color and patterns and textures and all that sort of stuff. So first thing that I like to do is get my walls filled in black. So we're going to be using the magic wand for most of this, and we can set it, keep the defaults for the most part up here. I'm going to use a 3x3 average with a tolerance of 32. And I'm going to basically come in here and pick my walls like this so you can see how it will, select these. So just pick inside where the walls are like this, and just go around our image like this, interior walls, exterior walls, and picking all of these walls, populating them up. Okay, so we're going to get all these. I'm not sure why there's a line there, but that's okay. We can get rid of that. Whoops. If you make a mistake like that, like I just did, just do a hold down Control Z and undo. We'll come back in here, and we obviously got a little problem here. You can see here this wall comes down and there's no line down here. So that was a mistake that I made in Autocad. So I'll have to come back to that after I get done this part. So it's always good to see those sort of mistakes happen. I want also these little pieces here, which are our supports for the porch. So I'll pause this for a second and get all those selected, and then come back to here in just a second. Okay, so we have everything selected that needs to be selected, and with that done, we're going to come into our layers palette here, and let me stretch this up a little bit so that we can see it a little bit better. Okay, so down here in the middle is our create new or fill or adjustment layers. So I'm going to fill this in with black, and we can always change the color later if we want. That's the great thing about using these. So if I click on solid color, by default it's going to be white. I want to just kind of come down here and pick black, and you can see it immediately fills all these in with black. Creates a new layer for us, creates a layer mask for us, and gives us a name over here. So I can expand this out a little bit, and we'll just call this wall fill. Okay, so now let's zoom out and kind of look at this. Okay, so we can see we have everything done for that. I need to come in and fix this little portion right here, because obviously we had a little bit of an issue in our kitchen area that I didn't pick up. So I need to close these areas off. This wall needs to come down and close right here. Okay, so it probably is a half wall or something like that, but it's still a wall nonetheless. So in order to fix this, we're going to come in to our paintbrush, and well, actually we can do it a couple different ways. We could actually, yeah, we'll use a paintbrush. Never mind. We'll just use a paintbrush, and oops. In here, let me close that stuff out. We're going to click on our paintbrush, and I'm going to change and add a brush in here. I want to use a square brush. So if you come up here and drop this down in brushes, you come to the little gear up here, which are our options. We drop this down, and we come down here to square brushes. And I'm going to just say append, and that adds it back to the bottom of the list so that we have these square brushes. Okay. So I'm going to use a 1 pixel brush, and we're going to zoom up in here so that I'm seeing all this sort of stuff. And what I need to do is create a new layer, okay, right here. And I'm going to start right up here with my 1 pixel brush right there. I want to make sure that I'm using black instead of white. When I just clicked up there, I saw it made a white pixel instead of a black pixel. So I want to do that again and just pick right there. I'm going to hold down Shift to make a straight line and click down here like that, and that'll just create that straight line. and I'll hold down shift and create another straight line like that. So that will create my lines that I can use to, you know, fill in again with this. So I can go in here now, because this is a mask. I should be able to fill that in with a color. So let's do this here. We're going to come up and yeah, it's not going to let me do that. I'm actually going to undo what I just did and try a different method. So I'm going to go over here to my history and back up a couple steps. And what I'm going to do instead, I'm going to delete this layer. I'm going to target the mask, because remember, on a mask we're either painting with black and white. And this is a little bit confusing because we're using the color black. So let's just change this just to red for a second, so that we can kind of see it a little bit in a different light. So here's our red color, here's our mask. So in our mask, basically everything that we're doing in here is basically black conceals and white reveals. So white's revealing our walls, right? And everything else is concealed. So what I want to do is come up here and pick a brush, like size 12 or whatever. And I'm going to come in here, and you can see my brush. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger so that it's the same size as my interior wall, like this wall right here. So I'll just bring it down here and make my brush a little bit bigger. That looks about the right size right there. So we'll just come over here, and painting with white, I'm going to click up here. This is going to be my wall. It looks a little bit too thick, but that's what it should be. So I'm going to click right about here, and I'm going to hold down shift and click down here like this, and that creates my wall in that case here. Okay, so no problem, that's all done. Okay, and I'm going to change these back to black. So I'll double click on this and change it back to black. Okay, and we'll zoom back out. Okay, so the next thing that we can do is start working on the floor plans, or the floors a little bit, the floor finishes. So what am I going to put out here in this deck? So I want some natural boards out there. So we need to talk a little bit about textures and all this and that. So I want to kind of show you guys how this works. So I'm going to come back to my original layer here, and I'm going to rename this line work, because we always have to come back to the line work. When we're using the magic wand tool, we come back to the line work in order to pick the area that we want. Okay, if we didn't do that and we were on, say, the wall fill layer, and we come in here with our magic wand, notice that first off, when I'm on this color, I get the cannot do anything symbol, right? If I click on the wall fill layer, I can't do anything either with the magic wand. So I have to come back to the line work layer, and now I have the magic wand. So I want to fill in this area and this area with the same flooring material. So I'm going to pick here, and I'm going to pick here. Okay, like this. The stairs I'll do separately here in a minute. But notice one of the things that we forgot to do is we forgot to put in a line across here for the room boundary, and the same over here. So before I go too far, I might want to do that. So it doesn't really matter, really, to tell you the truth, because we're working with masks, so we can always kind of fix this stuff out later with masks. But just to make things a little easier to understand, I'll come in here to my line work layer, and let's just zoom up to this for a second. Okay, so we'll go ahead like that, and using my brush again, I'm gonna maybe use a 3-pixel line this time so it's easier to see, and I want to make sure that it's on black, and I'm just gonna click here on the edge. So this flooring would go all the way out. There would be a threshold here anyway, but you know, we could have it go all the way out. It really is depending on personal preference, whether you want the flooring material to come all the way out to here, or do you want it to stop here and put in a different material here for the threshold. It's up to you. We can, you know, do it like this here. We'll pick here. I'll pick my first line, my first point right there. I'm going to hold down the shift key and click over here, and it's going to put that nice black line across there. Okay. Now, I really don't want to see these black lines after the fact, so you may want to put these on another layer. We could always hide these underneath another layer, but you know, thinking ahead, I want to actually kind of put those on their own layer. So I'm going to, again, back up a step here, Control Z and Control Z again, and I can just create a new layer. Actually, no, we're going to do what I just did. I'm sorry. Yeah. So, kind of doing this on the fly here. So, yeah, we're going to do it on the line work layer, and we'll worry about whether or not I see them, those lines, or not. So I'll hold down the shift key and put that in like that. Now this one here is going to be, the flooring is going to come in and stop right here for the living room. So I'm going to put a line there and hold that down, and I put a line in there like that. Okay, so it'll zoom back out and zoom back into that area. So again, I'll use my magic wand tool and come in here and pick there, and then pick there like that. So you can see the door isn't selected, but you can see where it's going to fill. So at this point here, we'll do the same thing that we did for the wall fill, only this time we'll pick, instead of a solid color, we're going to pick a pattern. Okay, so when we pick pattern, it pulls up the pattern dialog box. So obviously this is like a default pattern here. So you can see I have these default patterns in here, and I can pick whatever pattern that I like. Okay, and in this case I don't have any flooring options that I really, you know, care for here. So to get more patterns, I can drop this options down here, and we can have patterns in here like artist surfaces and erodible textures and rock patterns. So let's pick rock patterns just for a sense of, just so we can see what will happen. I'll say append, and it puts these in here so I can have like granite and these different rock patterns. But I want wood in here, so for right now I'm going to leave that alone and just say okay. So at this point I don't have the right pattern in there, so what I'm going to do is come up to File, and I'm going to say Open, or actually we'll click on Browse. We'll go into Bridge here. We'll browse in Bridge for a second, and we'll come into Bridge, and I'm going to go to my folders, and I'm going to find my textures in here. So I'm going to pause for a second till I find those. So in Dropbox, under the stock DVD, there are patterns in here, or texture maps I should say. So here's texture maps, and here's wood, for instance. Okay, and here are arch mats. Okay, you can come in here and you can see these are Autodesk's patterns here. So here's like wood flooring, but this is a deck, so I kind of want some raw kind of wood out there. So I can look at any of these patterns in here and decide what pattern I'm going to use. So we'll come down here. There's a good one right there. I'll use this one right here. So you find the pattern that you want and open it up in Photoshop. So it opens it up in Photoshop. This isn't actually what I want, because this is board and batten. You can see the boards and the batten. So let me close that out for a second, go back into Bridge, and let's pick this one instead. We'll open that one up. Okay, so here's this pattern in Photoshop, and I want to make this into a texture that I can use in here. Okay, so what I'm going to do, it's very easy to make a pattern. I'm going to come up here to edit, and we're going to come down here to define pattern. So when I click on define pattern, it asks me for a name. You can accept the name, or you can call it, you know, floor 1, and hit OK, and that will create that as a pattern. So I can close that out now, and then when I come back in here, I can double click on the pattern that I put in here and drop this down, and here's our new flooring pattern in here. Okay, so it's just that easy. Now if you wanted this to go in a different direction, so say you wanted it to rotate 90 degrees, I would just open that pattern back up again and make one that's going 90 degrees. So I would just go back into Bridge, open this up, come up to Image, say Image Rotation, and do 90 degrees counterclockwise or clockwise, it doesn't really matter. And then I'll just come back in here to Edit, Define Pattern, and we'll call it Wood Floor 2. Okay, and close it back out again. Don't save. And then in here we just double click on our layer pattern again, and we should have both of them in there. There's our first one, and here's our second one. So in this case here, you know, I might want it going this way just so that my steps will show up a little bit better. Now the other thing that's going on here is, you know, how wide are these boards? This is a 3-foot door. Okay, so in this case here, if I put these back on, if this is a 3-foot door, then it means that each one of these planks is about a foot in thickness, and that's probably not correct. So we need to just scale them down a little bit. So up here we can come onto the scale and just kind of scale them down just a little bit like that. So, you know, something like that right there. That looks good. I'll just hit OK. 50%, so that means they're like 6-inch planks. So I could type in, you know, 50 and just be happy with that. Okay, we'll come back to the steps here in a minute, and we'll populate some more of these in here. So the thing that you need to know about patterns is whether or not they tile or not. So we need to talk about tileable patterns versus non-tileable patterns. Okay, so let's talk about tileable and non-tileable patterns here for a second. I'm in Bridge looking at my texture library for wood. And if you look at some of these patterns, for instance here, we'll look at this one up close here. We'll open this up in Photoshop. First thing that we'll notice is that it's got a black border around it. It's hard to see, but it's there. The second thing that we'll notice is that we have this knot down here. And if this was a tileable pattern, that knot, this darker area, would repeat up here as well. And the grains over here would match the grains over here, and so on and so forth. So if we look at a tileable pattern, like say one from say Autodesk, if we go into our arch materials in here, and we'll come down here and find another wood pattern. Okay, so something like this pattern here. Okay, so basically what's going on with this pattern is these lines here are matching the lines on this side, and the lines up top are matching the lines down here. So in order to see this actually work, I can change this into a pattern by saying Edit, Define Pattern. I don't know why it's called Stock Sunset. That's kind of funny. Call it Wood. Wood 1. Okay, so that's now a pattern. And this one here, I'm going to crop, and I'll just use the crop tool here for a second, and we'll just pick something that looks like this and crop everything else away. So at this point here we'll say edit and define pattern, and we'll call this wood 2. Okay, so we have these 2 in here now, and so what I'll do next is just create a new drawing here for a second. All right, and I'm gonna just create a pattern fill here. So here's our first one. Okay, this was our one that I made. This is our non-tileable pattern. It's very obvious, isn't it? You can see the lines between all these. And if we look at our other one, this one here, you can see, well, that's filling up the whole screen, but what if we make it smaller? Okay. Ooh. We can see that it's tileable, and we can see the the lines in here horizontally and vertically are a little bit different, but you can see that it does kind of blend in to one another. So having a seamless tile is important when we're working with these. So in order for us to save time on this project, I've put into all of your Dropbox folders some patterns that are already predefined for us to make our lives a little bit easier. So on the internet, you can go out there and find, let's just go Photoshop floor patterns. Okay, oops, patterns. Alright, my internet's a little bit slow here at my house versus at school, but okay, so we'll do some. Alright, so some of them I've already downloaded for you here. So seamless wood floor patterns, okay, all of these you can go out here and find floor patterns. This is one that I've picked up for you. You can download this zip file, and it's got all of these tileable floor patterns already set up for you, and they're basically set up for Photoshop. So to use these in your folders, let me just go in here for a second into Dropbox, and let's look here at student work. So in, say, for instance, John's folder here, you can see I put in here the patterns, okay, and in here you can see we have these patterns already set up. They have the PAT extension, and we have 254 floor patterns. For this particular project, 254 floor patterns and Sue's wood patterns are two good ones that we can choose from. So what I need to do is load these into Photoshop so that we can use them and have these nice tileable patterns. So let's set up for our next room here. So I'll come up here and pick our living room here, and I'll go ahead and pick our door areas here. Okay, so we have our floor all selected now. I'll come in and do a pattern. Okay, obviously we don't want this one, so I'm going to drop this down and click this options button here, and I'm going to say load patterns right in this list, and I'm going to go out to Dropbox, and I'll go into your student work here, and I'll just pick one from, we'll go back to John's here for a second, and I'll pick Sue's wood patterns right here. Hit open, and so that loads up these wood patterns from Sue's wood patterns, and you can see we have them at 90 degrees to each other, okay, different colors and so on and so forth, different colors and textures. Okay, so we have all those. Let's load up some more. I'll hit load patterns. And you only have to do this once. Once they're loaded up, they're in there, they're good. So I loaded up the 254 floor patterns in here now. So now we have even more options. We have parquet type floors and so on and so forth. But you know, if you can't find a floor pattern that you like and want to use, then you can always make your own. I showed you how you can make your own. It's fairly straightforward. You just basically open it up and pull it in, and you should be all set to go. So, you know, it depends on obviously what the client wants, obviously, and all that sort of stuff. But you can see some are larger and smaller than others. Some aren't going to work. Some may work, some might not work. Okay, so anyway, you go ahead and pick the floor patterns that you want. You put them in, scale them to whatever you might want here. Whatever size works for you, hit OK, and then just continue on. Okay, putting these floor patterns in. So the next step after doing this is to obviously put in all these floor patterns, and then I'll come in and focus on the doors. We'll fill in the doors, we'll fill in the windows, fill in the steps. Then we'll put in appliances and sinks and all that sort of stuff. Put in our labels and so on and so forth. So over here on this one, for instance, here you can see, you know, I have all of this already set up for you. So let's look at our next thing here, which is our doors. Okay, so we'll come in here and focus on a door up here. Alright, so here's our door. You can see our door swing here. And so some things that are going on, we have this door swing right here, which obviously is on top of this. This is our line work layer. If you don't want that in there, which I don't necessarily want that in here, so you can come in here with your eraser and just come in and erase that out. It's just as easy as just kind of doing this sort of thing. But when you do that, notice what's happening here. It's basically erasing that out, and it was because of this mask. So we can't just simply erase that. So what I want to do instead, if I wanted to get rid of something, is go to this actual mask and paint with black or white. So black conceals, white reveals, so I'm going to paint with black and just come in here and actually paint with white. Come in here and just take this out. So you can see we're not actually getting rid of any geometry. We're just putting that in there like that. And then this line here, which is our room separation, if I want to get rid of that, I can just paint that out as well and kind of get rid of that as well. So, and I can kind of take that right out like that too. All right. So now I'm ready to go ahead and put in my doors. Okay, so all the doors are going to be just a color. So come back to the line work layer and use your magic wand again. Pick your doors. Come in here with a solid color. In my case here, I'd like them to be kind of a yellowish, kind of brown kind of color, something like that. All right, and I'd also like to put a stroke on those, so I can go in here and do a stroke and maybe say center on that, and you know, you can change the size of it if you want or whatever. So that's how I would go ahead and fill in my doors. So you can see it's a time consuming process. It's going to take a little bit of time. Now that we come over here to our kitchen, let's focus on this area for a second and kind of look at what I've done in here. So we'll zoom up to our kitchen here so we can kind of see what's going on here. Okay, so obviously here we've put in our countertop. Okay, we've put in our sinks, okay, our stove and all that sort of stuff. So where do we get, you know, stuff like this? So that's what I'm going to show you next. So I've come into the internet, and basically in Google I've typed in plan view kitchen sink. So as you can see, we have all kinds of different plan views of kitchen sinks. So if I want to use this one in my Photoshop document, I'm going to open it up and click on view image. I'm going to see my sink and go ahead and right click and say save image as. Stick it someplace, your desktop, your thumb drive, or whatever. And then come back into Photoshop and open up our sink. So we'll say open. Here's our kitchen sink. I'll hit open. The problem with our kitchen sink right now is it's got a white field around it. So I can use my magic wand again to pick that white field and say select inverse, so that just the sink is selected now, and use my move tool to cut that out and just paste it right into Photoshop in here. So here's my kitchen sink. So I'm not even really using AutoCAD's line work, and I'm going to rotate that by clicking out here. If you hold shift down, it will rotate in 15-degree increments. So we can rotate it like that, get it kind of positioned over here, something like that. Hold down the shift key, get it sized down here correctly. Okay, so I'm putting in this sink, which isn't necessarily right, but I can stretch it out as well and kind of fit it in there, kind of like that. I'll accept that, put that in there like that. So now I have my kitchen sink in there, you know, and that's going to work for what I need. If I want to get a stove, I'll just basically come in here and plan view range, okay, or oven. Let's try oven. How about stove? There we go. So plan view stove. So if at first you don't find it, you know, you can keep looking around, but you should be able to find images for, you know, everything that you need. So here's this nice Jenn-Air. I'll pick that, and here's our image. It'll clean up here after it loads. And I'm going to say right click, save image as. Save image as, here we go. And hit save. Come back into Photoshop. Open. There's my standalone Jenn-Air range. In this case here, it's already separate from its background, which is nice. So we can just drag and drop that right in here. Plop it in there. Shrink it down. Okay. Shrink it down some, like this. Rotate it around so the buttons are going in the right location, and I'll stretch it to kind of fit, and close enough. Okay, so I can populate that like that. To get my counters in here, that's going to be another issue. So I'm going to, first off, it's a good idea to label these. So I'm going to say sink, or we'll do kitchen sink. And we'll do this one, which will be stove. Okay. So then I'm going to make a new layer right here like this, and we're going to call it Countertop. Okay. So Countertop, and basically what I'm going to do for my countertop is use my polygonal lasso tool and basically trace where I want my countertop to go. So I'm going to just kind of do this, and if you hold down shift, notice it will constrain this so that it's going at a correct direction so that it's not askew. So I'll just kind of pick there, hold shift down, click up to there, and that's a seat there, so I'm going to come back to here, come up to here, come over to here, and close that off. So by doing that, we've created a selection, okay? And I could add more in here, okay? So I'm going to do that. I'm going to click here, hold down shift, click here, click here, click here. This is an oven, a wall oven, so I'm going to pick there, come over, pick there, pick up there. So I have these two done. These are my countertops. I'll come back to this one here in a minute because we have line work that we can use on that one. So at this point here, we'll come in here and do a pattern and pick our pattern that we want. In this case here, I'll pick just something easy for right now. I'll come back and fix that later. But that looks good enough for right now. And that should work for what I need. Obviously the sink is below this, so I need to move the countertop below the sink, and that should pop that out like that. Okay, so if you look at this now, you can see the sink's on top, but we are kind of missing the line going around here, and if we want a line on here, the easiest way to do that would be this method here, where we actually take this layer, the countertop layer, and we're going to rasterize this. So when I rasterize this, it's going to basically convert this over here so that I can't work with it again. So you want to do this as a last step. So if you like the way that this countertop looks and you're happy with it, then you can do this. So in order to come back to this, it would be hard after you rasterize this. So what I'm going to do is right click on the layer and duplicate the layer for the countertop. And I'll turn this original one off. This is my copy that I'm working on. So I'm going to right click on this and say rasterize a layer, and notice what happens to this. It just basically turns into this whole pattern that fills up the whole entire image, and this right here is the mask that's controlling that. So what I need to do is target the mask now and right click on that and say apply layer mask, and now we have this countertop on there, okay? And because that's all by itself now, I can go ahead and stroke that, put a stroke on that, and you can see what it does. It puts a stroke all the way around that. So, you know, if you want the stroke on there, that is, you know, some people may want it on there, some people may not want it on there. It's totally up to you. But if for some reason or other you decided later on I wanted to change this pattern to something else, so say for instance we go back into Bridge here for a second, and we go into our stock materials. I'm using Autodesk's materials because a lot of them are you know, fairly decent. So say for instance we have a tiled countertop. I don't really like tiled countertops, but that's okay. We'll put this in here anyway. So I'll pull up my tile, I'll come into edit, define the pattern, okay. I don't care about the name. Alright, so now that I come in here and I want to change the countertop pattern, I can't do it on here easily. I could go in here to FX and do pattern overlay and drop this down and pick my tile, okay, like that, and you can see it'll still, oops, that's opacity, I meant to do scale. So I can do something like that, okay, which that'll work, okay. So you know, you have that ability, okay. versus this ability here where you double click on that. So it just kind of depends on, you know, you just have to know the ins and outs of that. Okay, so here's without the line, all right, and here's with the line. So it just depends on, you know, what you're trying to accomplish there, but either way that you do it, it's fine. So okay, to finish this up, if we come in here to the island and I want to put that same pattern on here, basically I still want it on this countertop, so I want to actually put it on this mask. I wouldn't actually create another new layer for this. I would actually put it in here. So basically, if you come back to the line work layer, using your magic wand, we'll come in here and we'll pick that like so. You can see how it's going around that. Come back up here to the countertop layer. Change it so black and white is set, and I want to fill this in with white. I'm going to hold down the Control or Command key or the Alt key, and I'm going to hold down Alt and hit the Delete key or Backspace key on a PC, and that will fill that in with white. Alternatively, you can come over here to your flood fill, and we're filling this in with black or white. Okay, whoops. Undo that for a second. So I need to come back to this mask and I need to fill this in with white, because white reveals, black conceals. So now I fill that in and you can see it's putting in that same pattern. Okay, so either way, there you go. So as we're doing this, we're starting to populate this up. So just take this a little piece at a time as you're doing this, and before you know it, you'll have this all done over here, this Photoshop part right here. So you can see here we have my countertops in here and the bathroom tiling, you know, all this sort of stuff. All right, so okay, so next up is probably the landscaping part, where we actually can put the grass out here, and again, all these are just patterns, and you're going to use your paintbrush to kind of paint those in there. So you know, for instance, if I want to put some mulch out around here like this, I'm going to basically create a new layer, and it's going to be below, in between the line work layer and the color fill layer, and I'm going to just come in here, create a new layer, and I'll call this mulch. Okay, and yeah, basically I can paint with black if I want to, and I can use a soft brush if I want to, and I can come in here and make my brush larger like this and just start painting like this. Okay, so we'll get a nice kind of smooth line, like that's kind of doing that sort of thing. Okay, now notice it's painting through this. That's because I don't have anything in there yet, but notice behind here these are on top, so you know, it doesn't really matter if you come through that or not, and just kind of come in there and delete that stuff out. Okay, alright, doesn't really matter. Okay, so I'll just kind of finish this up by kind of doing that sort of thing. So anyway, basically you come into the special effects on that, you do a pattern overlay on that, and we come in here and let's load some patterns here. Let's see, wow, organics probably. Let's try some organics here. So, yeah, those don't look so hot, do they? Yeah, those aren't looking so good. So let's go into bridge here, and we'll come into my textures. You can come into ground, find some nice textures in here, and here's a nice mulch here. So we'll open that up in Photoshop. Oops. Open that back up. There we go. We'll come in here to edit, define pattern, hit OK. So it kind of looks like leaves, but you know, it is leaves, but we can use it as mulch, I suppose. So we're gonna do pattern overlay and drop this down, pick that. Okay, so there's our mulch in the corner. Hit OK, and now whatever we paint on this layer, okay, we'll come over here and put some more mulch in. Okay, so you can kind of see how that mulch goes around there like that. Okay, and then I want to put some grass in beyond that. Again, so we can come in here. First off, let me find some grass. Alright, we'll find some grass that I might like. This is a fairly decent one here. So edit, define pattern. Okay, that gives me that. And again, we'll create another new layer. This one's going to be called grass. And again, I'm going to paint with black. Just kind of paint with black here. And at this point, it's just a matter of, you know, layer manipulation. I'm going to have a path over here as well. So I'll kind of put this in and fill this all in with black. Okay, so something like that. Fill this in as well. My path's going to kind of come through here. So go back into my special effects here and do my pattern overlay and pick my grass. So it is my grass. Okay, depends on if you want your grass above or below your mulch. Okay, so if you want your mulch kind of like that, so we can do that sort of thing. We can go ahead and put my path in next. So, you know, if I want a definitive path in here, I can use my lasso tool if I want, and just come in here and say, okay, I want my path to kind of go like this, and it's kind of going to come down and go across, something like that. So this could be my path, and we'll go ahead and call that path, and we're going to fill that in with what? Black. Alright, so there's my path, and throw on the pattern overlay on this, and come in here and find some cobblestones or something. Ooh, river stones, that looks nice. Alright, so we'll put that in like that, hit OK, and again I'll bring that down below my grass. So that the grass is kind of going around it. So that way when I come back on my grass, I can kind of clean that up a little bit and just come in here with a smaller brush, say, and just kind of fill that in kind of like that. So there you go. That's basically how we can kind of arrive at some of this other stuff, and we can put in some other plants. And one thing that I don't like about this one that I did here is the fact that we have, you know, some realistic looking material like we have here. Okay, we have this realistic looking stone and these kind of fake looking plants. So you kind of have to decide yourselves whether or not you're going to go all photorealistic or you're going to go semi-photorealistic, where we have plants like this that are semi-realistic. Sometimes things will work out where you don't have to worry about it, like these stoves and these sinks and things. These are actual like 3D models, and we could also get some of this stuff from SketchUp if we wanted to, because we could look at them from above and use SketchUp to do that. I could show you how to do that as well in another video. But for right now, just kind of try to keep in mind what you're putting in as far as planting materials and so on and so forth. So basically in this exercise we're using fill patterns for most of everything. The last step in this whole process is to basically put in some shadows around the walls and around the doors to help give a little bit of depth in here. So to easily add shadows, you can use drop shadows basically to create shadows along the walls and doors and things like that. There is other methods to this, but this is one that we can use to just create the illusion of depth, and it works fairly well. So what I'm going to do here is show you how to take your walls. For instance, here I'm going to make a duplicate. Well, actually no, I'm going to select the mask for the walls by holding down the Control key, or actually the Alt key on a PC, and selecting the mask itself so that it's selected like this. And what I'm going to do is create a new layer right above it, and I'm going to fill in this layer with either black or white using either Command backspace or Alt backspace. In this case I used Command backspace and filled in my walls white. Okay, so this gives me a layer that is filled in with white, and then I can go in here and add a drop shadow to this layer. And what I can do is drop shadows are kind of a neat kind of feature in Photoshop, that when you come off the dialog box you get the move tool, and you can actually move that drop shadow wherever you want to put it. Okay, so you can see how you can kind of position this, you know, however you want. So you can kind of do something like this. Okay, so I could go ahead and position this wherever I would like, and the spread will make the shadows larger. Okay, spread them out, and then the size will obviously make them larger as well. So you can see the difference between spread, and spread will also kind of make them look kind of fuzzy. Okay, size will bring them back a little bit like that. So you can kind of play with these sliders till you get, you know, the look that you're trying to achieve here. And what we're trying to do is to just give some sort of illusion of depth on this. So I'll do something like that, okay, where I have these set up like this. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to separate the shadows from this white layer that I just created, because I still want this wall fill layer. I just want the drop shadows. So in order to separate an effect from a layer, I'm going to come up here to Layer and come down to where it says Layer Style and say Create Layer. And what that will do is it'll extract the drop shadow out as a layer by itself. So when I do this, I'll get this dialog box saying some of the effects cannot be reproduced, and that's okay. In this case it'll be fine. So what it does is it creates this new layer right here called Layer 2's Drop Shadow. So Layer 2 I don't need anymore because that's just the white wall, so I can drop that into the trash can. And then what I'm left with is these drop shadows at this point. So these drop shadows can be moved around, you know, so you know, you have to decide what direction, you know, you want your sun coming from and where you want these drop shadows to kind of fall into place. So I'm just using my arrow keys to kind of do that. So if the sun was kind of coming in, we chopped the top off this house, and it was kind of peeking in, so it's at a fairly steep angle right now, but it's creating these steep shadows. You can see here it's creating them on the outside and on the inside. So that immediately gives us a little illusion of depth there. Of course, you know, we could add some along the window as well. So, you know, you could come in here and let's create another new layer above this. And we could come in with a paintbrush as well. Come in and use a soft round brush like that. And painting with black, we could come in here and, you know, finish this up a little bit by clicking there and clicking here, for instance. And that's going to create our shadow along this wall here. Lower that opacity a little bit till it kind of blends with that other one in there, so you can kind of see how that goes, and we can kind of blend those in like that. So you can either use the drop shadow method, or, you know, you can go in with, you know, a paintbrush. Sometimes I find it's easier to just kind of come in here with a paintbrush, you know, depending on the size that you want. Just kind of come in here and, you know, paint in these shadows like this, you know, because you can separate out, you know, your walls like that. Like this here is above this other thing, so there should be kind of a shadow going across here like this. Each one of these steps is going to have a shadow line that's going to go from here to here, and from here to here, and from here to here. So that's kind of creating that illusion of those steps here. I didn't get that one that very good, but so you can lower the opacity on that, and, you know, kind of play with that as well. And you can go around and soften these up a little bit if you want. Right now we have a real soft brush, but again, the opacity up here could make a big difference in this. So let me just zoom up to this for a second so we can kind of look more closely at what I'm doing here with shadows. So let's undo back those steps a little bit. So over here, you know, that shadow's kind of working for us. Over here with the steps, you know, you may want to, you know, lower the opacity of this even further, so that you can come in here and just kind of come right here with one click, hold down shift and another click like that, and that gives us our top step there. And then right here we'd kind of do another one like this, kind of giving us that illusion that, you know, there's some depth here. So you're kind of coming down like this. So when you zoom back from this, it'll kind of look a little bit better. So as we kind of look at this a little bit closer, you can kind of see. So whatever method that you choose, I mean, that's totally up to you, but you know, you can go in there and, you know, fairly quickly go around this thing by, you know, just clicking like a couple clicks like that. That creates a short shadow along the wall there, along the window, excuse me. So you can kind of do this sort of thing along the windows, and then you can make your brush a little bit larger for your walls, so you can kind of come in here and do that kind of shadow like that. You know, some people may put shadows all the way around. You know, that kind of creates that whole illusion of depth as well, so you can kind of trace along all this like that, and, you know, go like this and go like this. Whoops. Kind of doing that sort of thing like that. And, you know, you can always use your eraser to go in there and erase some of the shadows that you don't want in there, you know. So by putting these in, it just creates a little bit of illusion of depth, and that'll help greatly with your rendering of your floor plan. So the very last thing to do after you get the shadows done is to just put in the text with drop shadows, whatever color or however you want it to look. So that pretty much takes care of that. Have fun.